Frost clung to every surface of the alien forest, turning branches into pale, glittering claws that scraped the low clouds. The patrol advanced in a loose wedge, 5 figures moving with a mechanical precision that betrayed centuries of training. Their armor, translucent plates interlaced with living circuits, glimmered faintly under the blue haze of Eidolon IV's twin moons. Lieutenant Serix led them, his posture perfect, his gait confident. Behind his visor, his pupils rippled like oil across crystal, scanning readouts that painted the landscape in layers of light. Radiation negligible. Temperature -38. Visibility minimal. Ideal conditions for freezing human corpses, Serix said, his voice processed through a chorus of harmonic tones. Laughter followed from the squad, short, metallic clicks of amusement. They had all heard the same propaganda. The human remnants were scattered, broken, and starving. Yet their command had ordered a sweep of the northern forest, where signal ghosts kept flickering in and out of the comm grid. Waste of resources, muttered Officer Kareth, hefting his plasma rifle. We're hunting shadows. Serix didn't correct him. The truth was, he believed the same. The humans had fought savagely but predictably. Ambushes, traps, last stands. Admirable in their desperation, but futile. Still, the interference in their scanners irritated him. He despised inefficiency, and something in this place refused to be cataloged neatly. They trudged deeper into the snow, their boots sinking through soft drifts that hissed beneath each step. The air smelled faintly metallic, as though the forest itself bled under the weight of the cold. Thin vines hung from the trees like frozen veins, and every sound, the crunch of snow, the hum of armor servos, echoed too clearly in the stillness. "Lieutenant," said Rathal, the youngest of the squad. His armor's voice pattern was still unrefined, too bright in tone, picking up traces of combustion. Human brass casings 5 meters east. Serix turned his head, a ripple of light passing across his visor. Casings? Impossible. No human weaponry functions here. The cold would crack the barrels. Rathal crouched, brushing snow away with a cautious hand. He lifted a small, tarnished cylinder between his fingers, its surface streaked with frost but unmistakably metallic. "They do function, sir. At least once." The rest gathered around, peering at the relic. Kareth snorted. Old ammunition. Probably left from the evacuation. A relic of the primitives. Serix took the casing, turning it over. It was recent, too clean, too sharp-edged to have lain buried long. The faint scent of propellant still lingered. His mandibles twitched slightly beneath his mask, an involuntary motion he quickly suppressed. He straightened. "We proceed with caution. The human species excels at dying dramatically. Let's ensure it remains their only skill." They moved on, tension slipping into their formation like a sixth companion. The ridge ahead loomed through the mist, a serrated rise where ice and stone fused into jagged silhouettes. Static pulsed across their visors. Their targeting systems glitched for half a heartbeat. "Signal disruption increasing," reported Kareth. "Source unknown. Could be geological or tactical," Rathal whispered. Serix caught the tone. "Speak your mind, soldier." The younger officer hesitated. "If there's a human sniper..." "A sniper?" Serix interrupted with a laugh that shimmered like fractured glass. "In this temperature, their blood would crystallize before their rifle charged. Don't credit them with more resilience than they possess." Still, his hand tightened subtly on his weapon. He scanned the trees, each branch etched in frost, every shadow thick enough to hide an enemy. There was something oppressive about the silence, as though the forest were listening. They climbed the slope in single file, snow giving way beneath them with muted sighs. Near the crest, one of the soldiers paused and gestured toward a shape half buried in the ice. A helmet, human-made, cracked, and filled with frozen moss. "Souvenir," Kareth said, kicking it aside. The hollow thunk of metal against stone echoed far too loud. "End of story." Rathal flinched. "That sound will carry." "Let it," Serix said. "Let whatever lingers here know that the war is over." But even as he spoke, something subtle shifted in the air. The wind fell still. A vibration, faint but distinct, brushed against their armor like a whisper. One of the officers adjusted his helmet's seals, puzzled. "Pressure anomaly," he murmured. "My internal gauge is—" The rest never heard him finish. A muted crack split the air, a sound almost too soft to notice, smothered by the snow. Then a sharp, crystalline pop followed, and the officer's helmet burst outward in a halo of glittering shards. A spray of translucent fragments caught the light as his body slumped silently into the snow. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The sound of falling glass lingered, each fragment tinkling against the ice like distant wind chimes. "Contact!" Kareth barked, diving for cover behind a ridge of ice. "Sniper, north quadrant." "Impossible," Serix hissed, even as his sensors scrambled for coordinates. Nothing. Only static, white, and endless. Wraithel's voice trembled. "Sir, they're watching us." The lieutenant scanned the tree line, his breath fogging the inside of his visor. There was no motion, no heat, no light, just the whisper of snow settling where the shot had fallen. "Formation Delta," Serix ordered, forcing calm into his tone. "Eyes on every sector. Whoever did this will reveal themselves." Yet as the patrol spread out, a grim understanding crept into his thoughts. The interference wasn't random. The casings weren't relics. Someone had been here all along, patient and unseen, shaping the field like a predator preparing to kill. He crouched beside the fallen soldier, fingers brushing the ruined helmet. The edges of the glassy material were smooth, melted clean through by kinetic impact. Precision work. Human work. For the first time in years, Serix felt the faint pulse of something unfamiliar stirring in his chest cavity. Not fear. Never fear, but the cold realization that perhaps extinction did not make humanity weak. It made them quiet. Snow began to fall harder, erasing footprints and softening outlines. Somewhere above, deep in the folds of the ridge, something shifted with purpose. Serix straightened, rifle raised, visor reflecting the dim light of the storm. "Let them mock us," he whispered, more to himself and the others. "We will see who laughs last." And from far beyond the ridge, hidden beneath layers of frost and silence, the unseen hunter watched the squad tighten formation, just as planned. The world through the scope was narrow, patient, and perfect. Frost had gathered along the rim of the lens, softening its edge, but the image at its center was sharp, a cluster of alien figures shifting cautiously amid the snow. "Whisper," 9 exhaled slowly, the vapor of her breath vanishing before it reached the scope's glass. The shot she'd taken less than a minute ago had been measured to the millimeter, the timing exact. The target had dropped as expected, armor shattering like spun sugar. Now she waited for the others to move. Waiting was the discipline. Waiting was survival. Her heart rate steadied at 40 beats per minute. Neural calibration held. Every twitch of muscle, every breath was deliberate. The rifle, an M99E glassbreaker, lay steady across its tripod, its surface faintly dusted with ice. The weapon was a relic now. Obsolete, fragile by the standards of the beings below, but it still obeyed her will with mechanical loyalty. She adjusted the focus slightly, tracking the officer who had crouched beside the body. The lieutenant, judging by his posture. She could see his visor flicker as he spoke to his squad, though his voice didn't reach her. Their kind always moved with arrogance, as if the air itself belonged to them. Beneath the gilly weave, her skin prickled against the cold. The fabric was layered with reactive fibers that mimicked snow, moss, and shadow, but even with its adaptive systems, the temperature gnawed through. Her gloved fingers flexed once, just to reassure herself she was still flesh. 30 hours in position. 30 hours watching the ridge, listening to static and wind, knowing the moment would come. Her orders had been clear: deny ground, disrupt communications, make them fear the terrain they conquered. She had not been told to survive. Her visor displayed faint thermal echoes of her targets, dim blurs against the frigid backdrop. The aliens had better sensors, better armor, better everything. But they still relied on predictability, on patterns, on faith in technology. Whisper. 9 smiled faintly. Technology failed. Flesh adapted. The memory surfaced unbidden. Her unit's last transmission. The evacuation had gone wrong. Transports compromised. Coordinates scrambled. She'd volunteered to cover the retreat, expecting extraction that never came. That was 87 days ago. In that time, she'd become the ghost they feared in intercepted comms. One human sniper, designation unknown. That was her legacy, a rumor with a trigger finger. Through the scope, one of the aliens gestured toward the forest's edge. They were trying to triangulate her shot, tracing angles, predicting origin points. They wouldn't find her. She'd shifted positions 3 times during the last storm cycle, crawling through terrain that shredded armor seals and froze unprotected flesh. Humans were adaptable because they had to be. These creatures had never known desperation. They'd never had to fight for breath in their own skin. She marked the lieutenant as primary, tagging his movements with a subtle reticle flicker. He stood too tall, too centered. Authority bred confidence, and confidence killed slower than bullets, but just as surely. She inhaled, counting the rhythm of her heartbeat. The rifle hummed as the coil charged. Timing was everything. A gust of wind swept through the trees, shaking frost from the branches. She fired in the same instant. The recoil was gentle, muffled by the snow. Through the scope, she saw the round arc perfectly into the lieutenant's path. But at the last instant, he ducked, diving behind a ridge of ice. The projectile struck the barrier and vaporized a spray of frozen shards. He'd moved faster than expected. Whisper. 9 adjusted, cursing softly. They were learning. Movement below, one of the soldiers deploying a drone. The machine rose on whirring rotors, scanning with blue light that cut through the mist. She tracked its pattern, calculating its sweep radius. When it neared her perch, she stilled every muscle, even the tremor of breath. The drone passed close enough that she could hear the hum of its rotors. Then it turned, drifting back toward the ridge. She let it go. Patience was survival. Aggression was death. She shifted her rifle's bipod, crawling a meter sideways through the frost. Her elbows left no visible impressions. The ghillie suit redistributed pressure, mimicking the uneven texture of snow. She'd built it herself from scavenged materials, fibers from survival tents, insulation from a downed transport, fragments of camouflage netting. The aliens believed only machines could achieve perfection. They forgot that hands, too, could craft miracles when life depended on it. The squad below began to spread out. Their formation was too clean, too deliberate. They were baiting her, trying to draw fire. Whisper. 9 watched them fan across the ridge, each one stepping exactly within the other's field of view. Clever, but not clever enough. She tracked the one farthest left. Rathow, though she didn't know his name. His armor emitted faint thermal spikes each time he exhaled. Nervous, young, predictable. She took the shot. The round tore through the blizzard, invisible and absolute. Rathel's body jerked, the impact driving him to his knees before he toppled face first into the snow. The others scattered instantly, shouting commands. Whisper. 9 exhaled, feeling no satisfaction, only the smooth rhythm of completion. She was the instrument, not the emotion. Then came the counterattack. Plasma bursts lanced into the trees, vaporizing bark and snow alike. The heat seared past her position, melting the edges of her cover. She rolled sideways, calm and fluid, sliding down a shallow incline before re-establishing her stance. Her visor flickered as magnetic interference spiked. They were adapting quickly. She liked that. It kept her sharp. She switched her weapon to low power, engaging kinetic rounds to preserve energy. Another burst of plasma carved through the air where she'd been seconds earlier. Her neural implant tracked trajectories automatically. She could almost feel the mathematics unfolding in her skull, the art of survival written in velocity and distance. The firing stopped abruptly. Silence reclaimed the forest. broken only by the faint hiss of falling snow. Through her scope, whisper, Nine saw the lieutenant again. He'd found cover near a broken ridge, his weapon drawn but motionless. For a moment, their visors aligned. His gaze toward her, her scope centered on him. Two predators, seeing each other without truly seeing. Whisper, Nine hesitated. Killing him now would end the engagement, but she wanted him to live long enough to understand, to carry the fear back to his command. She whispered into the cold, her voice barely audible. Tell them the planet isn't theirs. Then she powered down the rifle and melted backward into the snow, vanishing as quietly as she had appeared, leaving behind only silence and the echo of their own dread. Snow swallowed the sounds of death. The ridge was quiet now, except for the faint crackle of cooling plasma and the distant moan of wind threading through the trees. Serix crouched beside the fallen forms of his squad, the frost creeping up their armor like a shroud. For officers reduced to silence in less than 10 minutes. Their helmets lay fractured around them, glittering shards half buried in snow. Each reflected his own distorted face, and for the first time, Serix hated the sight of himself. He keyed his comm, but the link spat static. No signal. The jamming field still hung thick around the ridge, like an invisible fog. He adjusted his visor, switching between thermal, motion, and electromagnetic scans. Nothing. The forest was a blank slate, stripped of energy signatures. Only the storm moved, shifting the air with whispering indifference. Report, he commanded automatically, though no one was left to answer. The words dissolved into the cold. He rose slowly, gripping his rifle. The weapon's charge indicator pulsed red, half capacity. He should have retreated to the extraction point, but instinct overruled protocol. Pride, maybe, or something older. He would not leave this place until he understood what had killed his soldiers. Not just a human, something more deliberate, more disciplined. A creature born from extinction itself. Serix advanced toward the ridge's peak, every step deliberate. He remembered the human artifacts they'd unearthed months ago. Letters, trinkets, data logs. They'd read like the relics of an inferior race, obsessed with sentiment. Yet here, in the frozen forest, he was beginning to think sentiment had forged their strength. A faint glimmer caught his eye near the tree line. He froze. The reflection had come from something smooth, not natural ice. He aimed his rifle's optics, zooming in. For a moment, he saw nothing but white noise. Then a shift in the snow, subtle, purposeful. His breath slowed. Show yourself, he murmured. You've earned that much. The forest gave no reply. But he knew. Something was there, watching, assessing him as he had assessed countless prey before. His grip tightened, and a strange calm settled over him. So this is humanity's final soldier, he said softly. The ghost of your dying kind. A voice came from somewhere above him, quiet but unmistakably human, filtered through distance and cold. You mistake extinction for surrender. Serix pivoted toward the sound, scanning upward. On a ledge halfway up the ridge, a figure crouched among the frost, a shape almost indistinguishable from the snow. Only the faint outline of a rifle betrayed its presence. You kill from shadows, Serix called. Come down. Face me as a warrior. Warriors die loud, the voice replied. Ghosts choose who hears them. Something in that answer stung. He raised his weapon, targeting the ledge. Before he could fire, the figure moved, fast, too fast for his sensors to track. A blur of pale fabric and metal, flowing like wind across the ridge. Plasma bolts lanced upward, carving through the snow, but the figure was already gone, vanishing between trees. Serix recalibrated his scope, heart rate spiking. The storm intensified, flakes swirling thick around him. Visibility dropped to meters. He turned slowly, scanning for motion. Then he saw it again, just a shimmer to his left. He fired, the blast slicing through mist. Silence answered. A whisper came from behind him. You think technology gives you dominion. It only makes you louder. He spun too late. The human emerged from the snow itself, ghost white, rifle aimed with terrifying stillness. The barrel was inches from his visor. Through the reflective glass, he saw her face, a faint blur of pale eyes and frostbitten skin. There was no rage there, only resolve. Serix froze, every calculation collapsing into instinct. Why? He managed, the question breaking out before pride could stop it. Why stay behind? Her tone was even, almost gentle. Someone had to remind you what fear feels like. He understood then that she wasn't fighting for victory. She was fighting to exist in their memory, to carve her defiance into the bones of the world they thought they owned. He opened his mouth to respond, but the rifle fired with a muffled thud. The impact shattered his visor into 1,000 shining fragments. He fell backward into the snow, sight fading, the world splintering into reflected shards of moonlight. The last thing he saw was her silhouette dissolving into the storm, as if she had never been there. Time passed. The snow thickened, covering the battlefield, softening edges, sealing the ridge in silence once more. When the alien reinforcements arrived hours later, they found only frozen bodies and shattered helmets gleaming under the moons. The soldiers spread out cautiously, scanning for threats, but their instruments returned nothing. No trace of a sniper, no energy residue, just the hum of the storm. Their commander surveyed the scene, kneeling beside Serix's remains. He lifted one of the fractured visor pieces, studying the mirrored surface. What weapon could have done this? He asked. No one answered. One of his subordinates shifted uneasily. The humans used kinetic projectiles, sir. But no known caliber hits this clean. The commander turned the shard in his gloved hand, watching it catch the faint light. Then perhaps the weapon wasn't the point. He dropped it into the snow, the sound barely audible. Reports circulated through their network in the days that followed. Some dismissed the incident as malfunction. Others whispered of a surviving human marksman haunting the frozen frontier. The younger officers gave it a name, the White Ghost. They said she could bend the snow around her, that she watched from every ridge where arrogance dared to climb. Far beyond the ridge, beneath layers of frost and shadow, whisper, 9 moved through the forest in silence. Her rifle was slung across her back, its coils drained, her breath steady. She no longer counted the days. Numbers meant nothing here. She existed between them, a rumor sustained by fear. She paused at the crest of another hill, looking down toward the alien lights glimmering on the horizon. For a moment, she allowed herself to remember warmth, laughter, the sound of voice calling her name. Then she closed her eyes, letting the wind bury those ghosts beside the others. When she opened them again, only purpose remained. You'll learn, she murmured to the empty forest. The cold remembers what you forget. And as the storm swept over Eidolon IV, the snow fell thick and unbroken, hiding her footprints once more.